What's wrong, Bookish Bear? You look really stressed today.
Oh boy, I spent all this time working on my books, but now people are saying I need to get on social media. But I don't really want to get on social media. It's terrifying, and there's lots of people, and I'm just a bear. I need help. How do I get started on social media so that when my books are ready, I can have a social media platform as an author? And do I even need one? Is it really even necessary? I need some help.
Oh, I see. Social media marketing can be really intimidating. Who am I kidding? I've been on social media for forever, and it's still really intimidating. But thankfully, it doesn't have to be quite as scary as you think. Today, I'm going to break down the ways that you can get started on social media as an author into 5 simple steps that can help get the ball rolling and get you to start making connections so that whenever you do release your books, you have a better platform to stand on and you're more likely to find readers. So don't worry, I've got both you and Bookish Bear covered. So first of all, why do you need to be on social media as an author? It can be very tempting, I think, as authors because we tend to be quieter people, we tend to be more private, more reserved, to try to find ways that we can just avoid being on social media altogether. However, unfortunately, in this day and age, if you want to have an audience as an author that's more than just your family and your friends, you have to be on social media. This is for whether you are self-publishing or traditional publishing. With self-publishing, I feel like people more expect that you're going to have to be on social media because you don't have the traditional publishing house, you don't have as much of a marketing backing behind you. However, what a lot of people don't tend to realize is that this idea that if you go traditional, a publishing house is going to automatically get you readers for your book is honestly a myth. Now, while it's true that you might get a little bit of marketing with your first gig, these big budgets and big promotions that you see of books being done by publishing houses are almost never their first time working with that author. It's incredibly rare that an author's first book gets that kind of budget. Generally speaking, if a new author's book gets that kind of marketing behind it, it's because they are already a well-known person in some other industry. Because of that, the traditional publishing house knows that they are already pretty well known, and therefore they are going to be able to pull readers if they market that book just because that person's well known, or at least that's going to play a big part of it. Because of this, because of these big publishing houses spending all this marketing money on these newer but already have a platform authors, smaller authors like ourselves tend to look at that and go, oh, if I traditionally publish my book, I won't have to do as much social media marketing. And that is a total myth. Even those kind of bigger authors that automatically get all of this marketing from these publishing houses, they still have to do social media marketing. It is an expectation in this day and age that if you are an author and a traditional publishing house takes you on, you will market your book. That is kind of a non-negotiable. In fact, something that some publishing houses and a lot of times some agents look at nowadays is if you have a platform. I don't have a huge platform, which is something that sometimes I worry about because I don't know if that's going to affect now that I am trying to get into traditional publishing and looking for agents, but I have something. I have a presence. I am a person that at least a small group of people knows and they look to for specific types of content and specific types of books. And because of that, I am more likely to be considered for a agent deal or for a book deal from a company than somebody that has no social media presence at all. And this is something that's important for every author to consider, that unfortunately, even though it's scary and it can be very difficult for us to want to put ourselves out there, because the internet can be a scary place and it's very difficult to know what you're getting into sometimes, you still have to do it. At some point, if you want to be a professional author or even just an author in any capacity outside of your friends and family, the difficult truth is that you are going to have to get on social media and put your face out there and become known as the author behind the books. And when people like you as the author, that is whenever people are going to want to actually read your books. So now that we have addressed why you need to be on social media, whether you're self-publishing or traditional publishing, I'm now going to get into 5 steps that you can take to get started putting yourself on social media and just get the ball rolling and take those first baby steps. But first, a word from Sponsor Bear.
Hi, I'm Sponsor Bear, and this is where I would be talking about our sponsors, if we had one, but we don't yet. So until then, I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, and comment down below what your favorite part of the video was. It really helps support the channel a lot, and it makes a difference so that hopefully at some point we can be monetized so I can afford better honey. Yeah, that's what we'll go with. Better honey, because I like honey. But anyway, until then, I'm going to do this funny little dance for you to thank you for liking and subscribing. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sponsor Bear. Anyway, as I was saying, these are going to be 5 steps to help get you started in marketing yourself, first and foremost, before you market your books on social media. So the first step is you need to choose 2 platforms that you would like to start with. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to start with more than one because they generally reach different types of audiences and it gets you used to posting content across multiple platforms, which is something that you're going to want to do because making content for social media is a lot of work. And if you can make the smallest amount of content possible to reach the biggest audience, that is ideal. And because of that, getting started on 2 different platforms is a really good experience for you. For me personally, I started with Instagram and YouTube. I'm not a big fan of TikTok, never had been, and that whole situation is kind of a mess anyway, but a lot of other book tubers or author tubers, for lack of a better word, or just people who make author content in general, authors on social media. Other options that they really enjoy include TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. I personally just use Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and my Facebook audience on my author page is very small. I mostly just use YouTube and Instagram. So you don't have to use all of them, which can be comforting because I know for me, I just personally don't like TikTok or Twitter. So the fact that I can still kind of reach similar audiences by just using multiple other types of platforms is very nice because it can be very overwhelming just doing 1 or 2. So you don't have to be on all of them by any means, but you should start by picking at least 2 that you're going to start with so that you can get used to posting across multiple platforms and kind of get a feel for how they both work and the differences in platforms. For example, I have been having a lot of issues lately on my other accounts, not my author accounts, because I haven't been posting on those as much, but I've been having a lot of issues with, for some reason, Instagram is just really not like boosting a lot of my videos for some reason. And the ones that they do boost or the ones that people tend to like more, I haven't really been able to figure out why they're doing better. Whereas for whatever reason, similarly on YouTube, I've discovered that there's a certain time of day where if I post for whatever reason, they tend to do better. And knowing little things like that as you compare 2 different platforms can help you realize that it's not necessarily anything you're doing right or wrong. Algorithms can just be finicky, and sometimes there might not be a specific reason. It's just that one platform might be more finicky than another, and that's okay. And those are wise things to kind of get a feel for and get to know because it can help you not get as discouraged when you're on social media whenever you know, okay, my content's not just doing bad, it's just that this platform it's doing a little better on, this platform is doing a little worse. It gives you good insights. Maybe one of them has more of your target audience, maybe one of them is just more user-friendly. It can be very discouraging if you're only using one platform because maybe your content is just tanking and nobody's watching it. But if you have the other one, then maybe, not always, sometimes it just tanks on both, and that's a bummer. But sometimes if it tanks on one, it'll still do okay on another, and that can help it not be quite as discouraging. Adding to that, as you're learning how these platforms work as you do 2 at once, the second step is to research the platform and figure out how it works. You don't have to do a deep dive. This can be as simple as watching a couple of YouTube videos. Make sure they're within the last 2 years because algorithms change a lot. Ideally within the last year, but sometimes it's hard to find videos that are that specific, that are from somebody that you don't think sounds really annoying. Sometimes you find a channel you like that has to do with social media content and all their stuff is from maybe 2 years ago. That's okay, but I wouldn't go more than a couple years. But you can research kind of the gist of how it works and therefore kind of better understand what approach to take. For example, on YouTube, hashtags are pretty much useless. They can work a little bit in shorts, but if you put them in the body of your main video, it's not really gonna do a whole lot. It's mostly just looks cool and they show up at the top underneath your title, and if somebody happens to click on that hashtag and scroll for 100 years, your video might show up from a different video. But other than that, on YouTube main videos, hashtags are pretty much useless. Instagram, on the other hand, do not post a video without hashtags. The other thing is, in today's day and age, you are probably going to want to make some kind of video. Most platforms tend to favor video content over photo content. You don't necessarily have to make video content, but it is something to take into account that maybe if you feel like you're not growing as much, it's just because you're creating a type of content that just takes a little bit longer to get the ball rolling because for whatever reason, people or the algorithms don't tend to favor that type of content as much. And these are just all good things to bear in mind, and you'll learn so much from watching just basic understanding videos of how an algorithm or a platform works, so that while you don't want to obsess over making things as optimal as possible to the point where you lose the fun, which is part of why I've disappeared from social media for so long, because I lost all the fun of it because I was so focused on trying to make everything the best it could be. And you do want to make things the best it can be, but don't obsess over it. Know the basics, keep in touch every now and then if maybe you think something major's changed, but other than that, try not to worry too much about it, especially at first. You're just learning the basics, you're just getting the hang of it, and therefore, you want to be trying to have as much fun as possible experimenting, because honestly, while you're starting out and you don't have that many followers, it's the perfect time to experiment and just change everything up, because it's not going to be as much of a shock to people because there aren't as many people watching you if you all of a sudden decide to completely change what you're doing. So enjoy the freedom, enjoy the experimenting, create crazy content with puppets, and just enjoy the process. Which, of course, leads us to the third step, which is just start making content. I already addressed a lot of this. Just experiment, have fun. You can see what other people are doing, and while you don't want to copy them, the typical types of things that are successful for a reason. Maybe you decide you want to do book reviews. That's personally not my thing, but that's what some author tubers like to do. Maybe you decide you want to make humorous reels. I've done that quite a bit in the past. I probably need to get back to doing that. Maybe you decide, like me, at some point that you want to start incorporating puppets into it, and that becomes your thing. Just experiment, have fun, put yourself into it. Remember, you are marketing yourself as an author. You are showing people the parts of your personality that they're going to see in your books, whether you totally realize it or not. Personally, I tend to be a very whimsical and kind of all over the place person, and I think that that is reflected in a lot of my books. The whimsy and even if there's not magic, because currently the only books I have out don't have any magic in them. Closest thing is there's a talking dragon. But the magic and the whimsy and just seeing the wonder in life. And of course, for me, it's because I'm a Christian and because I have always loved trying to see the hand of God in little things everywhere. And, knowing that he's created all these things around us, that does bring some sort of sense of magic to the world for me, and because of that, it affects kind of how I act as a person. I tend to be seen as very upbeat and very whimsical and all over the place, but it's also reflected in my books. Even if they're not fantasy, there's something that people see that has that feel to it, that wonder in it. And because of that, that's kind of part of how I market myself as an author. I don't even really do it on purpose. It's just in the process of putting myself out there and being myself, I inevitably show parts of my personality that are reflected in my books to the point where people are like, oh, I would probably enjoy reading her books because I enjoy how she talks about books and just kind of who she is as a person. And therefore, since inevitably we put pieces of ourselves in our books, they'll be like, oh, I want to read her books because I like these things about her as a person, and I'm sure those are reflected in her books. Now, your thing might not be that you're super upbeat and whimsical. Maybe you are quieter, and maybe it takes a lot longer for you to come out of your shell and kind of figure out how you want to present yourself on social media. That's okay. Not everybody is like a super outgoing, funny, reel-making character shtick. Maybe that's not your deal, and that's okay. Maybe you are a quieter person who provides really insightful book insights or other things. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and if you are so focused on being like other people, again, you'll lose what's special about you as an author, and that's the whole point of this, is yourself as an author, bringing people in because they want to be part of that, and then eventually they want to read your books because of it. So step number 4, after you've picked your 2 platforms and you have researched how those platforms worked, you've started making content, and you're starting to put yourself out there and kind of try to feel out what you want to do, the next thing is, and again, don't obsess over this, but do pay a little bit of attention as to what is performing better than others. While it's true that you don't want to let your content be completely affected by what others think, it is important to know what audiences are resonating with and what they're enjoying watching the most. Because while you shouldn't change yourself, for the audiences, maybe they're enjoying certain types of book reviews or certain types of comedy more than the others. And that is something that you want to pay attention to. It's not just about numbers, because something I know I fall into the trap of is I assume a video is better just because it gets more views. That's not necessarily the case, because maybe Instagram just decided that it liked that video for some reason and so pushed it to get more views. But another thing, and perhaps the most important thing you want to pay attention to, is which ones are getting a better ratio of how many people saw it and how many people interacted with it, especially comments. If your video only got like 500 views, but you got 10 comments, people really liked that video because they wanted to leave their opinions and their thoughts on that video. Whereas if you got 5,000 views and you only got 10 comments, or maybe even 1 or 2, maybe a lot of people saw it, but maybe not a lot of people felt impacted enough by it to actually interact with it and leave a message about it. Again, you don't want to obsess over these things, but it is wise to be aware of so that, again, you are investing your time and your energy into things that people are getting the most out of. Because, again, this is not just about yourself. You are also contributing something to people. For me, I contribute, here on YouTube, I contribute some humor, but mostly I contribute writing advice. And on Instagram, I'm about to try to kind of refigure out what I want to do on Instagram, but probably something similar. I tend to focus a little bit more on comedy on my short form videos, like on Instagram and stuff. But maybe I will start incorporating more advice videos. It will just depend. The other thing is that things change and audiences change, and what my audience really enjoyed seeing a year and a half ago when I posted more often on my author accounts may be different than what they enjoy seeing now. So again, you also don't have to hold yourself to any particular thing. Just pay attention and don't obsess over it, and make the content you want to make. But you can adjust little things here and there and lean into things that people are enjoying so you can provide the best content possible with the energy and the resources that you're putting into your content. Lastly, and the most important step, which is less of a step and more of a gradual byproduct of all of these steps combined, is build a community. One of the most important things as an author is to have not just readers, but also authors that you connect with. I don't have as many just readers that follow me as I do fellow authors. Most of my following is fellow authors, and that's partly because the content I create tends to be more geared toward authors and less towards just readers. Some authors have their social media very much geared towards readers, and mine tends to be a little bit more geared towards authors. But the other thing is, these authors were the main readers of my books when they first came out. When my books first came out, I mostly had family members, friends, and then my fellow authors that I knew through Instagram were reading my book. Now, the thing is you have to know is if you're friends with fellow authors, they are wonderful, they are caring. They will also rip your book to shreds, which is part of why you probably want to have these authors beta read your book before you publish it, or at least have some beta reading. I made that mistake when I published my first book. My first book had a lot of issues, and therefore some of the reviews that I got from my fellow authors were like, yeah, it was great, but it needs some work in these things. But that is also a great thing because it means that these authors are your iron sharpening iron, and they are helping you to increase your skills, be better, and sort of be accountability partners in that sense. Because in a sense, you want your book to be good regardless, but if you know fellow authors are going to read it, there's almost a different standard you're going to hold yourself to than if it's just your average run-of-the-mill reader is reading it, because you know they're probably going to catch more things, and therefore it's great because you have that accountability in place. So whichever one you tend to go for more, make sure you still have some author friends because it is really helpful, and networking is key because these author friends have platforms that can help you promote your book. In fact, when I was more active on social media, that was something I say we because I have kind of a group of authors that I'm friends with, we were doing all the time. When somebody would release a new book, we were reposting the posts and talking about it and just sharing it all over the place. And that also helped me with my book. But you have to actually kind of build those relationships and those communities with the authors before you release your book too, because again, it's more than just promoting each other. It's getting to know people, learning from them, kind of just building relationships. And while it's different because it is a relationship that's mostly online, you'd be surprised at the quality and how much you can take from some of these online relationships with fellow authors.
I think I get it now. So, Instead of putting so much pressure on myself to do well and get everything right from the start, I just need to get started, experiment, have fun, and eventually I'll get the hang of it, right?
That's right, Bookish Bear. And I hope that you learned some things from this video too. If you've been discouraged to start on social media, hopefully this was the push you needed to just get out there and have fun. Be wise about it and take certain things into mind, since you do want to be successful if being an author is part of your career plans. But also just have fun, let loose, and enjoy yourself. I hope that you found this video helpful and encouraging, and I will see you in the next video. Happy writing!
Read my script. I'm Sponsor Bear. Okay, man, my fingers are dying.